Let me just read that out
Go.
again so I get it right. Prince Harry amongst most at-risk royal as army service makes him top terror target. And the journalists have interviewed a couple of years back somebody from the Taliban who said ever since he joined the army, they've been trying to get him. And then as an Afghan leader, Owari Masrullah, who said it's just Harry's luck that he's been managed to escape so far. And then they've interviewed a former SSL soldier, Bob Kraft, and this was on the 11th of March 2021, who said that Harry is clearly a target for kidnapping, terrorism, and a whole lot of threats, and will need protection for a very long time. But whatever you think he should or shouldn't, and this gets me upset.
Oh,
It's 5 days. He risked his country for 10 years, and the Queen observed us for 70 years, and they can't give them 5 days peace. It's horrendous.
Gertrude, please. I'm sorry you feel so sort of emotional about it, and I can understand why this story might resonate with people, and certainly anybody who's had family difficulties. I'm sure you can feel or empathise with different characters in this story. Gertrude, I'd like to say, I mean, I take all your points, brilliant points, by the way, about how Harry is a target and has been a target for evil. But I'd like to think, anyway, that these are a family that they don't need our tears. They've got enough, whether it's Harry and Meghan, the Sussexes, or the rest of them over here. They've got enough. They don't need our tears as well, Gertrude. Thank you for the call. And I hope you have a better rest of the day.
It was one of those moments on live radio that stops you in your tracks. A caller phoned into LBC speaking to Matthew Wright, and they broke down in tears. Not out of pity, not out of frustration with themselves, but out of sheer heartbreak over the way Prince Harry and Meghan Sussex have been treated. And I think it struck such a chord because it wasn't a royal expert speaking, it wasn't a commentator with some hidden agenda, it was just an ordinary person. An ordinary citizen who felt the pain so deeply that they couldn't keep it in anymore. Their voice cracked, their emotions poured out, and what they said in that moment pierced through the noise of all the headlines, all the carefully manufactured smear campaigns, and got to the very heart of what this has been about. They said, he's served his country for 10 years, and the Queen has served us for 70 years, and they can't give them 5 days peace. It's horrendous. And you know what? They were right. It is horrendous. It is cruel, and it is shameful. When you really step back and think about it, Prince Harry dedicated 10 years of his life to military service. This isn't a man who spent his youth idling around palace walls. This is someone who served on the front lines, who put himself in harm's way in Afghanistan not once but twice, who started the Invictus Games to uplift and honor wounded veterans because he understood that duty doesn't end when the uniform comes off. And yet, despite all of this, he's been painted by sections of the British media as some kind of traitor simply for marrying Meghan, loving her, and wanting to build a life that prioritizes mental health and family. How twisted is that? How do you look at a man who has risked his life for his country, who has consistently used his platform for good, and then decide to vilify him because he refuses to bow down to a toxic, outdated system? It's the definition of hypocrisy. And then there's Meghan Sussex, who walked into that family with nothing but grace, intelligence, and a strong work ethic, who genuinely believed she could bring something positive to the table. Within months, she was out there championing mental health, gender equality, racial justice, and women's empowerment. She wasn't playing the royal waiting game, she was working. And yet, instead of being celebrated, she was attacked for daring to shine. The tabloids dissected her every move, twisted her words, and weaponized her very existence against her. To this day, Meghan cannot breathe without the press trying to spin it into something nefarious. That caller wasn't just crying for Harry, they were crying for Meghan too, because we've all seen how relentless this has been. The media hasn't given her 5 minutes peace, let alone 5 days. Now think about what the caller said. The Queen has served for 70 years. That's true. And for all the pomp and circumstance, you would think that service would be reflected in an institution that knows how to show compassion, how to extend grace, how to protect its own family members. But when it came to Harry and Meghan, compassion went out the window. They were hung out to dry, scapegoated, fed to the press in order to protect others. And here's where the heartbreak really cuts deep. The royal family could have stopped it. They could have spoken out, and honestly, they could have set boundaries with the tabloids. They could have protected Harry and Meghan the way they've bent over backwards to protect other senior royals from scandal. But, well, they chose silence. And that silence cost Harry and Meghan their safety, their mental health, and any sense of belonging. That's why a member of the public was on the radio crying. Because, even ordinary people can see the injustice when those inside the palace pretend they cannot. The British media loves to act like Harry and Meghan left out of selfishness, that they wanted the glitz without the responsibility. But that narrative, it really falls apart the moment you remember that Harry was one of the most hardworking royals before he stepped back. He had the military commitments, the charities, the Invictus Games. Meghan brought in fresh ideas and energy. They weren't running from duty, they were being pushed away by an environment that was toxic, racist, and hostile. And instead of admitting that truth, the media decided to smear them daily, hoping the public would turn against them. But calls like this one prove that the campaign hasn't worked on everyone. People see through it. People feel the unfairness. People understand that Harry and Meghan are human beings, not characters to be destroyed for the entertainment of tabloids. And let's not forget the double standards. Meghan was vilified for things other royals were praised for. When Meghan touched her baby bump, she was vain. When Kate did it, she was glowing. When Meghan spent money on her wardrobe, she was extravagant. When others did, it was elegance. The hypocrisy was, honestly, just blatant, and it was fueled by an undercurrent of racism and sexism that no one wanted to name, but everyone could see. That's why Meghan said in the Oprah interview that she simply didn't feel protected, because she wasn't, and Harry, as a husband and a father, refused to sit back and watch his wife and children go through what his mother, Princess Diana, endured. That's not betrayal. That's love. That's courage. The caller's tears were powerful because they were real. They weren't tears for the monarchy as an institution. They were tears for a family being ripped apart by cruelty and indifference. They were tears for a soldier who served his country with honor, only to be disrespected at home. They were tears for a woman who gave up her entire world to embrace a new one, only to be vilified and dehumanized. And they were tears for the simple truth that none of this needed to happen. All Harry and Meghan ever wanted was peace, a little breathing room, and the chance to live their lives with dignity. But the tabloids wouldn't allow it. The palace wouldn't defend it. And so, the cruelty carried on. What makes this even more shameful is that it happened during the Jubilee, a celebration of service, loyalty, and longevity. The Queen's reign was supposed to symbolize unity, but how unified can a nation really be when it allows two of its own to be torn apart by the press? The caller pointed out the obvious contradiction. If you can honor 70 years of service, why can't you respect 10 years of Harry's service? Why can't you give them 5 days of peace? Why does the circus have to follow them wherever they go? What makes this even more shameful is that it happened during the Jubilee, a celebration of service, loyalty, and longevity. The Queen's reign was supposed to symbolize unity, but how unified can a nation really be when it allows two of its own to be torn apart by the press? The caller pointed out the obvious contradiction. If you can honor 70 years of service, why can't you respect 10 years of Harry's service? Why can't you give them 5 days of peace? Why does the circus have to follow them wherever they go? And the answer, sadly, is because scandal sells, hatred sells, and certain sections of the press decided that Meghan and Harry would be their golden ticket to endless profit. But here's the part the media underestimated. Empathy also sells. The truth resonates, humanity connects. And the raw emotion of that caller proved it. Millions of people feel the same way. They might not always speak it out loud, but they know in their hearts that Harry and Meghan have been wronged. They know that behind the headlines are two people simply trying to live, raise their children, and make the world better. And honestly, no smear campaign can erase that.